Welcome everyone, this is Alexis from Nitrus. The tutorial we're gonna do today is basically we're gonna still work on our ActionRPG. We're gonna work on another ability that's like a cloak. First thing we're gonna do is just to show you, because in our character blueprint, all of our ability are, all the input for our ability are set as the key, which can go in your project setting and in your engine input. You can create these binding in the action mapping, like we're gonna do it just for fun. Let's say that's the cloak, and the cloak is gonna be on the key tab. So now if I go on the third person, I don't have to write tab for the key I'm gonna press. I just have to write cloak, and it's gonna give me the action event from the input, and that's basically the key tab, the tab key, sorry. So first thing we're gonna do to do a cloak, we'll need to make the character invisible, and we're gonna make it as an ability. So we'll create an ability cooldown for the ability 3. Yes, sorry. So let's call it ability 3 cooldown. It's a float, and it's gonna be equal to 1 for 100%. Good. Okay, like I said, I think in the last tutorial, when we set up this part of the ability system, we basically set the same system for every ability, so we can just copy paste. Good, but we have to change a couple of things, of course. Let's say it's not the ability 2 cooldown we're gonna check, is the ability 3 cooldown. Bam. Here we want to add a pin, and we'll create a variable that's called cast ability 5. It's gonna be a boolean. Oh, did I wrote ability 5? Yes. Ah la la. So 3, and if you want all your other, this part of the ability system is just to make it so that you cannot cast another ability while you're casting this ability, and at the same time it make it so that you cannot cast the same ability twice. Like if you already cast that ability, as long as it's not finished, you cannot cast it again. So we want to set it to every ability basically. Good. Right over here we're gonna take a 0.15 mana, and down there, if we don't have enough ability, I don't know, ability juice, we put the cooldown. Okay, that's perfect. And then we would be at the point where we set up cloaking. So we're gonna start by setting visibility to off, but as I'm looking at the code right here, we kind of already set the visibility to off in the dash. So I think I'm just gonna be copy pasting that part of the code also. All you have to do is don't take the particle system, don't set ability 2, set ability 3 to on, because you're casting it. That's true. Is that I'm doing the right thing, right? The mana. Don't forget that part of the ability system, you're just taking mana from the character, so try to make it that you take the same number of mana that it takes to do the attack, so there won't be like a bug in the middle of charging the ability or whatever. And let me just check. Now everything changed for that. We're gonna set can attack to off also. Okay, so if we test it, we should become invisible if we press on tab. But now we're just invisible, not really interesting, right? Okay, so to do a cloak, we're gonna need one material. I think we can do it with only one material. Let's make a folder material, so everything is organized, and right here we're gonna make cloak. Okay, there's nothing in it. We're gonna start by just taking the particle color. I think it's really not a difficult material that we're gonna make. We're just gonna take the particle color and multiply it. We're gonna make like a smoke effect or whatever, as you've seen in the intro. We're gonna multiply it by just a number. Whoops, like a constant. And let's try making it like 0.3, around this number. I don't think the precise number is important. And we're gonna plug that to the emissive color, so it's gonna emit. And we're gonna use a bit of opacity from the alpha. Multiply again by the texture sample. Well, a texture sample. We're gonna talk about that in a minute. Good. The texture sample you want to use would be, because we want to make a cloak, so it's kind of like a smoky thing. It just needs to save. It's really long. Let's just go on Google Chrome. Let's just go on internet. Let's just write smoke material. And I really believe that any one of these is gonna work. Because I think if you have, you see it's just really a bright color that's gonna be emit. If you have Infinity Blade effect, I think that's where it is. There is, it's not this one you want to use, but there is these kind of material. They can work too. If you don't go, you don't have to go on the internet, but if you don't have any material, these one are gonna work pretty well. We're gonna try with the one I just took on the internet. All right, so let's go back in a cloak and let's set, I called it smoke. Bam. And before we want to plug it back in opacity, but before we plug it back in opacity, we want to add a depth fade, and then we can plug it in opacity. And yeah, everything is good. You just have to add a depth fade and you multiply it. You know, the thing with my computer is my GPU really sucks, so anytime I do a material, it's gonna take like a minute to load. So I hope everybody's having a good week. And now we're gonna make a particle system, but we're gonna need two particle systems. Effect, let's say, uno. And effect dos. The effect number one, we're gonna start with this first particle emitter. We don't need to work in here, we need to go here. We're gonna add a GPU sprite. It's in type data, new GPU sprite. Then if we go in required, that's where we're gonna put our cloak material. Yeah, just to be sure. Bam bam. I think we want to set the duration because it needs to loop. Let's make it loop once. Let's make it good. Then we go into spawn and we leave them float constant, but you put the first one, the rate 0, the rate scale 1. And burst. Is it burst list? We have 0, we want to add 1. Of 3 member, it's gonna be count load time. Sorry, it's just because I just need to set the number, and I want to be sure I set the right number because we're as you saw in the intro, the cloaking has like multiple particles following you. So I don't think it's gonna make a difference if when I set like 10,000 you set 8,000 or 20,000, but it's gonna make a difference if you only set like 100 or 25. But we need to create another particle emitter that's also gonna be GPU sprite. We're also gonna put the cloak material. In the require, we're gonna set the same thing but for a fast loop. So the loop we need 1, right? Good. Now we go in the spawn. We're gonna set 0, 1, and the burst we're gonna spawn a count of 2,500, and the rest is you just leave it as it is. But now we have to add a couple of things. First off, we add what's called initial velocity. And in initial velocity, you put the vector uniform, and we're gonna set it from 100 to minus 100. Vector uniform, but here it's 100. Let's just copy paste everywhere. Don't mind what the particle emitter is doing right now, because we're just working on the particle system and these things, but we haven't set it on our character or anything. So let's just keep going. Now we're gonna add a constant acceleration. That constant acceleration is gonna be 0, 0, but minus 150 on the z-axis. And we want to add the last thing. It's a point of gravity. In attraction, point of gravity. And that point of gravity is basically just the radius, 500, and float constant, something like 250. So that there will be an attraction like to you for the particle to go as you move to go back to you. We need to add in each particle emitter what we call a scale vert or surface location. Just go in location and it's called scale vert. And all we have to check is the name. Now it's written vert surface actor. So we'll need to remember that name, but everything else is set the right way. And we need to add it in the other particle emitter also. And the name, we just make sure that the name is the same name as the first particle emitter. Good. The second particle emitter is gonna be the same beginning for the first particle emitter. We put GPU sprite. In the require, we put the cloak material. Now we're gonna set the emitter loop. Let's just do 1, 2. But we'll need to go in the delay that's right underneath the emitter loop and delay it a bit for like 2 seconds or 1.9. Good. Now let's go into spawn. Set. Okay. Now we need to go in lifetime. Sorry, there was nothing to do in spawn. Lifetime, we set float uniform 1 to 0. Let's see. The duration of the emitter, you start getting it, I guess. Okay, the initial size, we're gonna set the vector uniform, but not that big. let's see, 444, and the min we're gonna set it, let's say 0.3. I really don't think it's gonna make a difference if you set it 0.25 or that kind of number. I mean. So let's work the velocity. Velocity, just make it fast. Let's take 100 and just copy paste it everywhere and make the minimum negative. And now we need to do the point of gravity, and the point of gravity is gonna be less strong because we don't want because the first particle is all the particle that's going to be on our body, and this particle system is going to be the particle that follow us. So we don't want as much gravity for the particle that's going to follow us, because if there's too much gravity, they're just going to be stuck to our body. That's basically how gravity works. And now we're going to add two things. First off, what's called a scale vert, basically a surface location. Within that thing, I don't think we have to change something. We just want to make sure it's vertices, it's all 0. We update, in this one we update position in each frame, and we orient mesh. And the name that's going to be written here, we need to make sure that, because we'll need to write this name in the code for cloaking in our character BP, but we're gonna leave it like that. We'll just copy paste when we're there. We just need to remember that we need this name. And right here we're gonna add another thing that's gonna be a vector field, a local vector field. Basically you just add that. So now we have the local vector field in the particle emitter, but we need to set a vector field, but we don't have one, and Unreal doesn't really have one unless you upload a project on Unreal that have one, but I don't know a lot of them. Like I think Weapon Rack have one, but I think it costs money right now. But it was free like a month ago. Anyway, what I can give you is in the description there's a link to I think it's a zip file, and if you open it, it's a lot of these things, and they're all vector field already set. And they have different form or whatever, but it doesn't matter for the cloaking or the effect we're doing. And right now you're just going to see static vector field. That's what you want. And don't worry, the guy who made this vector field has no problem with you using it even for commercial project. His name is in the description and everything. So everything's good. So now we set the vector field. 0, 0, 0, 0, and let's say 10, 10. Okay, that's set. So now we need to make another particle emitter. And it's gonna be GPU sprite again. We're gonna go over this one faster because we're doing kind of the same thing. Let's spawn a hell lot of them. Lifetime, let's make a float uniform of 1. Yep. As I said, don't mind what's going on the particle system. The initial size is 111,333. Let's go in the velocity and put everything to 0. We need to set a scale vert surface location, but the name needs to be different than the first particle system. I made a mistake on the first particle emitter, but we'll write a 2 at the end of vert surface actor. Let's make a last particle emitter for this one. It's not a GPU sprite. It's the cloak material. It's a spawn of 100. It's a lifetime float uniform 11. It's the size 0.1, let's see, and 1 for the minimum. Good. So now you understand from the initial size. If you make it bigger, it's not gonna look like just a wisp of particle following you. It's gonna look more intense. And let's put the scale vert, one less scale vert, because We love them. So now we should be all good to start doing the cloak. Let's start by the beginning. So now we spawn emitter at location. We're gonna spawn basically the effect 1. The location is gonna be actor location. Okay, so now we're gonna have to plug the return value in something that's called set instance parameters. It's not a variable that we have to create. And the return value is the target. The instance parameter, we're gonna make array. And from that array, we're gonna take something that's called particle system parameter. Or we're gonna make it. And basically the parameter type is the actor. The actor is self. And the name is the name of the scale vert that we created. So now we need to go copy paste. Right, so now that we have that, we're not gonna waste time and we're gonna spawn emitter attached. It's gonna be attached to the capsule component. Okay, everything is good for the emitter, but we need to do the same thing. Return value to set instance parameter as the target. And we're gonna make array from the instance. And from the array, we're gonna make particle system parameter. And that particle system parameter is gonna be an actor. The type is gonna be an actor. The actor is gonna be self. The name that we're gonna put here is the name of the other scale vert. So just copy paste. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna add a delay. The delay is just how long you want the ability to last. So let's say your cloak for 6 seconds. So now all we have to do is set the visibility back on. Visibility of the mesh. And of course we had our sword. Before the set visibility, we need to take the return value from the last spawn emitter again and write deactivate. And it's a function that already exists. Yep, good. And as usual, we put everything back on because we didn't want our character to attack and everything while he was doing the ability. And now we want him to be able to do all of that. And I set the cooldown here. So basically you're gonna do the cloak for the 6 seconds that you're cloaking. Your ability is not gonna be used, and once you're done with the ability, it's gonna start recharging. You could put it somewhere else, like before the delay. What would happen is the ability would be used as soon as you press on the key, and it would start recharging as soon as you press on the key, but you could put another delay, etc. I'm just doing it like that. So now we should have everything that we need. We just want the ability to recharge. So as usual, we're just gonna copy paste one of these things and make a new custom event, of course. Good, and now we just plug it back, and of course it's not the ability 2, it's the ability 3. We just need to change everything, but it's the same logic. Good, so now we have the ability. All we have to do is set it in the HUD so it can recharge. Let me find an image that looks, I think I have a cloak literally. Oh, let's just use that. Good, so now we're gonna do the HUD. Okay, we're gonna do it real quick because if you watch the other tutorial about ability system, we already talked about that. We just need to do it. So once you have the progress bar, you bind the percentage, and we're gonna call it ability 3, and just copy paste. And just to be sure, we cast, we get the play index. We don't want to update ability 2, we want to update ability 3. And same here, we don't want the ability 2, we want the ability 3. It's the cooldown that we want to have, because this is gonna add to the ability, and this is gonna return the number of the ability cooldown back to the progress bar. So everything's fine. Now if we test it, oops, first off you need to anchor the progress bar. That's why it was in the middle of the screen. Now let's test it.
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
It's not working, but I can see that the particle system is applying on the character. That's what we're trying to do. But the particle that are being spawned or emitted are really weird. So let's change a couple of numbers. Let's go in the first particle system, put the initial size as a vector constant of 1. Now let's go in the initial velocity and put it all equal to 0. Let's put a lifetime in the second particle emitter of 5, minimum to max. And the initial size, let's make a vector constant of like 1, 1.5. Now let's go in the second particle system. For the velocity, we need to make a vector uniform of a maximum of 100 and minimum of minus 100. Well, I just realized my local vector field was 10, 10, 1, but I wanted it to be 10, 10, 10. Good. Now in the third particle emitter for the second particle system, we need to go in the initial velocity and let's just put it all equal to 0. Should be okay. Now make sure the scale vert is the right name. All we have left to do is test it. And it works. It looks fantastic. I think it's a really cool effect to apply on a character. You can change the color in the color over life or over time in the particle system. And sorry if it was a bit long, but when you work on particle system, you have a lot of things to check. Like in each particle emitter, there's 5 to 8 module to check, and each module has like 1 to 5 bucks, maybe 5 bucks to check. So we literally just check 120 bucks right now. So most of the time when you have problem with your particle system, it's in the particle system. The code was pretty simple. Alright, so thanks everyone, have a wonderful week and see ya!